Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolSomething.com, mana traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like you. My name is Evan Irwin, and get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, PDragon.
What's up, everybody? I'm getting so deep in the Bloomburrow that I think I might adopt a Fursona.
Nice. Reuben Bressler.
I mean, that's not a bad idea. How's it going, everybody? I'm operating on one monitor this week, so we'll see how this goes.
Those are rough times, not gonna lie. When you're dual monitoring like standard for months, years, so on, you go to one monitor, it's not cool. It's not
Worst productivity mistake I made. I thought I was killing it on one monitor. I got two. Then after that, I was like, I was living in the dark ages.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?
I'm never going back. You never go back. It's just you never go back. Now, if you missed our pre-show, patrons and subs of the channel get access to our extended version early. We kick it off with our first pick. And our promo code reminder, go to CoolStuffInc.com. Use the promo code Magic Mics. You guys out there have been doing this. I've got proof because I work there and stuff. But it's awesome. So do that. Use promo code Magic Mike. Save money off Magic, off One Piece, whatever. Go try Star Wars Unlimited. Go nuts. Use that promo code. Tell them we sent you. And of course, support your favorite streamer with your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we raid tonight. Thanks to that sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock using promo code Magic Mics. All right. So we wanted to talk a little bit about Bloomburrow. We are smack dab at the end of preview season. We are getting all of our previews out by tomorrow. The full set is going to land on Friday, and we have seen some goodness, and it is wild, and it is fun, and it is cool. And as usual, we are going to take a look at our three favorite cards we wanted to talk about for whatever reason. And go ahead and get started here. I guess, first of all, before we do get started, PDragon and Reuben, what do you guys feel about Bloomburrow at this point, in the we're almost done process?
I think...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
All right. I'm looking at the creature types in the set. Was kind of like my first thing. Because we know we're only going to be here for, 8 weeks or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my thought was, are each of the creature types going to be strong enough to hold up? Because some of these, birds as an example, or probably rats, we'll get one or two in the next few sets. Hell, especially in the next set, there's probably going to be rats, whatever. But we're not going to get raccoons or squirrels or
mice.
Yeah, mice is a good one probably.
Yeah.
Right, rabbits. So you need enough of them in this set to work, and I think there are actually enough. It feels like they even powered them up a little bit, just to make sure they can hold up at least for the next year if somebody decides to build some decks with those, which is a big thing to me because I feel like previously we've had mechanic locked set locked mechanics that actually couldn't do much once you moved on from that set, and now I feel like, okay, these might hold up a little bit, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it seems like, first of all, 100% spot on with the creature type thing. Anytime you have a tribal set, it is very dangerous that you might accidentally have a parasitic relationship mechanic. If we think back to Ixalan, pirates didn't really work, partially because there wasn't any support outside of the set. Same with dinosaurs, for that matter.
Dude, tell that to werewolves.
Well, that, and there were no changelings in that set, so you couldn't mix and match spirits.
So there was no flex between the two.
Right.
So it's really nice that even though we get some unique creature types, like frog, I don't think that there's been much frog support in the past, but there's gonna be ways to sort of play with frogs even outside of this set because of the way they've developed the creature types and sort of how they've put them together in this set. Also, the individual abilities are not parasitic at all. There's no splice onto arcane in this set.
Right.
There's expend, right? Which is spend 4 mana on
Offspring, make little,
just or just spend 4 mana. Everybody spends 4 mana.
Right.
Forage, remove 3 cards or sacrifice a food. Everybody can remove 3 cards from a graveyard or sacrifice 3 food. The frog mechanic is bounce. Hey, first of all, awesome. Good job, everybody. I wanted to be in that meeting when they were like, what should the frog mechanic be? And then somebody's like, what about bounce? And then they all said, get the out of the room. We're doing it immediately. I love that.
We're going to lunch. Good job.
Yep, we're all done.
We're done here. But coming up with these mechanics which are unique and different to the set, but still being able to interact outside of the set. Really, every one of them, really. The sort of black-white bats mechanic of like, if you gained and lost life, do a thing. Valiant being a sort of play on heroic, very easy to trigger. So like all of the things that they've done in this set to make it so that it lives in the wider spectrum of Magic the Gathering are perfect, especially because, again, we might not be back to Bloomburrow for a while, if ever.
Oh, I definitely don't think it's going to be an ever situation. Sure. It's a win, not an if, in my opinion. But I also
agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, the hat trick of like the set is sort of great by itself. The set is great as a limited environment. The set is also impactful in a constructed way, while also being cohesive enough to provide a unique experience. Is like it is the hat trick of hat tricks, and there's only been a few of those like ever. And like for example, for me, it's Dominaria, which I think just hit every possible checkbox.
Right.
And they've also been like. They've also been popping in a few things, like for rabbits, for example, Pollen Shield Hair was in Wilds of Eldraine, so was Regal Bunnicorn, and so you've got a little bit, and those are good cards. So these are cards, and you also like Preston the Vanisher, who showed up.
There's only one creature type that's bothered me so far, and it's birds, because I'm having a hard time of just like, you want some stuff without flying, but you want stuff with flying, and I'm not really sure what we're doing with that yet.
Birds, there's so many birds already that it's tough to do birds. And then there's no raccoons, right? The sweet spot for me is frogs, bats, lizards. Like
there's one playable raccoon prior to the set, and it's Bramble Familiar.
Oh, there you go.
The other ones suck. There's like 2 other ones, but they're garbage.
Right. There's not a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
not a lot of mice.
Look, one of the special guests, which means it's mythic, is Frogmite.
Mm-hmm.
Having to spend 4 mythic wild cards on Frogmite makes me a little sick to my stomach.
Sorry, man.
Are we going to be able to play with the special guests in Standard in this one?
No. This is there's stuff that you can craft on Arena for me, like you can use in Historic and Timeless and so on. And it's like it's needed Frogmite. I've wanted Frogmite for the Affinity decks, and it's like, oh my god, they're mythic, and it just feels so bad. Anyway, I'll get over that. Let's talk about some three of our favorite cards to talk about so far. I'll bring mine up first here. I think this card is super rad. In fact, I think this card is worth a whole bunch of money. Get these early before people realize how ubiquitous Fountainport is. Yeah. Fountainport is a rare land in the set that taps for a colorless mana. That's a wingding. For 2 generic tap, sacrifice a token, draw a card. That's any token. That's treasures or creatures or whatever. 3 generic mana, tap, pay 1 life, create a 1/1 blue fish creature token. Or 4 generic mana, tap, create a treasure token. So it has something to do all the time. Mirrex is already a very well played card in constructed formats. This is like Mirrex plus. Yes, you're paying a life for the creature, but otherwise, this thing is bananas, and I love it. Yeah.
I like this card because it fits into stuff like rabbits that's going to be making a bunch of tokens. Fits into squirrels that are making a bunch of food, right? Like, so this can just be a very simple, like, 2 mana, draw a card in a lot of situations. I don't see a ton of times, unless you're just playing against control and the game's gone long or whatever, you're going to make a fish. but the other 2 options of making a treasure, because then you can just sack the treasure the next turn. So every other turn, just draw a card as well. So I think that's pretty reasonable. They're going to get a lot of uses out of this card once it's on the battlefield.
For sure. I mean, the all-star is sack a token, draw a card. Obviously.
Yeah, right.
Any land that allows you to draw additional cards is always going to be good. The ability to make a 1/1, the option to make it, also huge. Like the fact that you can just make anybody on the board is a big, like I played Springjack Pasture to just make goats to throw under the tires.
There you go.
If I can also make one that's a win condition that also is like a storage land, like Springjack Pasture was, like Fountainport is, because you get a treasure token, like that's pretty good. That's like, we're getting a lot of value on Fountainport here.
I mean, it's also a ramp card of sorts.
Yeah.
You know?
it's just one of those cards that it's amazing when like I have nothing to do. This gives you everything to do. The bats, for example, the black-white mechanic is all about paying life, losing life, and so on. This lets you
Yeah.
pay a life right
Yep.
here every
Hey.
turn. Get those triggers in. I'm telling you, this is the exact type of card that commander players have like 7 of because they're in all these different decks all the time because they just do this weird little thing in all these different weird little ways. I love this card to death. I think it's great. So for my next card, I think this card is just incredibly rad. And let me tell you, as long as I've been around, since them rocks were very soft, even since the 90s and the late 1900s, if you will, we have seen our share of clones. We've seen everything clone everything. We've seen clones that are cheap. We've seen clones that are expensive. We've seen clones that can copy anything, clones that can copy lands, and so on and so forth. Well, by God, if we're going to go to Bloomburrow in the world of squirrels and rabbits and lizards, we're going to have birds. We're going to have a mockingbird. And I think it's just the name itself is beautiful, but the design is really great. Mockingbird is a rare bird bard. First of all, bird bard from the set. It is a blue and X generic mana. It is a 1/1 flyer. You may have Mockingbird enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. That's any creature with mana value less than or equal to the amount of mana spent to cast Mockingbird, except it's a bird in addition to its other types, and it has flying. So you have a flying version of anything they have, while it is mocking them essentially. It is a mockingbird, it's a bard. There's so much that everything connects that makes me love this so much.
Yeah, this is just a fun card. I mean, again, if you want to clone, cool. If not, it's still a 1/1 bird.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's
Still
a
flying,
1/1
man.
flyer for one. Still
Yeah,
gonna
like-
get your ninjutsu triggers. Still gonna get your deal damage to your opponent triggers.
Exactly. So it's still a relevant card on its own, which is kind of nice. Because the issue you run into sometimes is clones don't have anything worthwhile to copy. Right? Like that's the other option. You're sitting with these like 4 mana things in hand you can't do anything with. This can be used throughout the game still, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Mockingbird is spectacular. I mean, the name effect combo is perfect. It is equal to the mana spent, not equal to X. So if you pay 1 for X, you can copy a 2-drop, for example, which is also huge. The fact that it makes your thing but better because it has evasion is incredible. Extremely good card.
Yeah, the idea that you're not paying X where X is the mana cost, it's the total thing. Like that's a really clever way of getting around what would be the obvious downside. Why do we never play this card? Well, no, you just pay the amount equal to whatever they got, and then you got it. And even the flavor text laughing at you. No, I'm laughing as you.
Mm-hmm.
Just come on. This is some
Perfect.
chef's kiss design right here. Kudos to the WotC devs for making this one happen. My last card here I wanted to talk about was a really cool card. I was looking through the list and things, and obviously staying away from y'all's picks, and I was just like, man, this is cool, this is neat, this is interesting. And I was like, this card, it's got potential. It needs a lot. It needs a lot. And it needs a whole turn. It needs to get through, blah, 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 blah. And then when we're in Magical Christmas Land, everything happens the way you want it to. So when I play this on turn 3 and they don't kill it or do anything to it, and I swing in with the Infamous Cruelclaw, and I hit them, and magic happens. The Infamous Cruelclaw is a black, a red, and a generic mana for a 3/3 mythic legendary Weasel Mercenary that has menace. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. That's free.
There's a lot happening there.
Things get a little wacky when stuff gets free, and this is free. So, just throwing it
For
out.
me, like, shout out to Christina Kraus, because, man, like, this is some of the sweetest artwork in the set. Like, it's
really nice.
It's just like this weasel with this poison rapier and just so much going on in the with fireworks happening in the back. Like there's just so much going on. Like just a really cool card. And it's one of, I think so far, 2 weasels that got previewed in this set. I think there's only 2, maybe 3. But so another creature type we don't have many of, which is kind of cool to just see that weasels apparently exist in Bloomburrow.
Yeah.
And it's a mercenary for where that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an outlaw.
And in the right colors for mercenaries also. This card I think has a ton of potential. Like it is not that much of an investment to try to get this thing to get through. It does have Menace, so it has a little bit of an ability to get through. And if you are able to get through, you're able to cheat out big stuff quickly. 3/3 for 3. It's a good stat line. I'm not unhappy with that. We can give this haste in a number of ways. There's a 2/2 raccoon in the new set that could give it haste, for example.
Right.
There's a lot of ways to get this thing to connect immediately and maybe play like a 7-drop. Like there's some very cool stuff you could do with this card.
I also like the way they worded it, that you don't just get a dead card, right? Like it's always going to be something. It's till you get to a non-land card. So there's at least always a chance, which I like about it.
It's whiff proof.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think that, in a casual world, there'll be Vampire Tutoring. They just like Sylvan Tutor, for example, is one of the special guest cards, which is really rad. You are casting it by discarding a card. You're not just putting it on the stack or putting it on the battlefield or whatever. Right. Like you're getting the full boat. And so I think that is super cool. And I really like this card.
Oh, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is that the only way you can cast the card?
Yeah. Like you exile
so
it.
you have to discard.
Right.
You can't just pay the cost. Wow. Right. Okay. Yeah, but that makes sense.
Right. Plenty of things that synergize madness and on that can help with that. Again, how casual you want to get is whatever, but I think this is really cool. It's a low mana commander, for example, so I think that's why it's pre-ordering pretty high. And just overall a really super cool card.
Also of note, Voxy was the one who previewed this card. For those of you who are up on your memes, Voxy got a bunch of attention from the Hearthstone community because of her reaction to a card called Weasel Tunneler. And so getting a legendary Weasel makes perfect sense for Voxy. It's very funny.
She previewed both of the Weasels in the set because there's only
perfect.
2. There's only 2.
Well, there you go. Okay. That's why she got them.
There were 2.
At least so far, for what it's worth.
That's hilarious.
So far. All right, Reuben, what's your first card?
Hey, can I interest you guys in probably a worse, but still not that bad what's it called? Atraxa? Grand Arbiter?
Right.
Well, we have Atraxa at home, and it's still quite good and much more flexible. And can also get you an Atraxa in certain worlds. Portent of Calamity is X and a blue for a rare sorcery from the new set. Reveal the top X cards of your library. For each card type, you may exile a card of that type from among them. Put the rest into your graveyard. You may cast a spell from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost if you exiled 4 or more cards in this way. Then put the rest of the exiled cards in your hand. So, Magical Christmas Land. We pay X equals 4. We hit an artifact creature, an enchantment creature, a land, and an instant. Right? We exile them all. We cast one of them, and we put the other 3 in our hand for 5 mana.
Yeah.
I'm in the market for that. If we pay 7 mana for Portent of Calamity, or we spend 1 million mana on Portent of Calamity, we're definitely hitting 4 card types. We're playing a 7 mana creature like Atraxa, and we're getting everything else in our hand. So
we get up to 3 things in hand, but yeah.
Sure, up to 3 things in hand. But still, draw 3 cards, play something for free. I'm on board with this card.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I think the only concern, obviously a sorcery speed, and kind of has to be because of what it does, but I'm just thinking about what decks want to make that fit. And it might be whatever versions, like you're saying, are of the new Atraxa type decks. Because we know those are going to have to change because all the lands for Domain are no longer going to be standard legal. So they're going to be looking for some other way to build up mana or cheat an Atraxa out. And this could be one of those options.
Yeah, this to me is a blue-white control card. It's like a silly, fun, casual card because you can just spin the wheel and whatever. But your white-blue control, you want something that you can just dump a bunch of mana into, get something really great with it. You're going to put the rest of it in your hand. So it's not like you're losing out. It's just, I get this sick, bonus as well as getting to draw all these cards. Sure, you got to see them, but whatever. I'm the control deck. I don't give a crap. But overall, it's one of those where it might be too random to make it, but when it hits, man.
Atraxa finds this, and this finds Atraxa. I feel like that's the match.
That's pretty good, and you don't die from Sholdred with this. Thank you, Gilgalad 66. We appreciate that. But yeah, card's neat. What's your next one?
So my next card is, the parallel to draw is a very good card that existed in standard and in older formats. It just is it is using a mechanic that we've seen before in a different way. So Scrap Trawler is a card that is very good and has seen lots of play in like combo decks having to do with artifacts. Jackdaw Savior is a Scrap Trawler for flying creatures. Now, obviously, that's a much narrower group of cards than any artifact ever. But Jackdaw Savior is 2 generic and a white for a 3/1 bird cleric with flying. Whenever Jackdaw Savior or another creature you control with flying dies, return another target creature card with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. That is Wrath protection. That is weird, like, aristocrats shenanigans. There's a lot of value associated with the Jackdaw Savior. So if you have for example, like a 2-mana 2/1 flyer, and then play your Jackdaw Savior, you're not worried about your Jackdaw Savior or anything dying, really. And much less if you play like a 6-drop flyer, which is going to get back the rest of the stuff from your graveyard. I think this card has the chance to be a cornerstone of its own deck, in either standard or brawl and commander style formats.
Yeah, I think for sure if birds is a thing, this is one of the cards I absolutely want, just because it lets you just keep recurring threat after threat, right? And now your opponent has to try to figure out like what order to kill things other than just what to kill.
Yeah,
I'm ready to live that karmic guide life. I think Arju is correct from the chat. Yeah, this is one of those cards. It's like it's kind of hard to see exactly what it would be doing, but it's easy to see how it could be like really annoying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't kill that because I'm going to get back so and so, and then like I can't kill that other thing because I got to kill the Jackdaw Savior first because I got to get that stupid ability off the battlefield. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
If you give a mouse a cookie type thing, it's like...
It's very similar. There was a legend in Assassin's Creed that does this for legendary creatures.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same thing at half the cost with evasion.
I'm down for that. I'm down for half the cost with evasion. That sounds great. All right, what's your last card?
I mean, my last card to me is like, oh, they want this card in standard. They were like, we want a tokens deck in standard. What do we need to give to tokens? We need to give them Kumena, basically. We need to give them a 3-cost 4/3 that does 85 things. So they gave us Baylen the Haymaker, who's a 4/3 for red, green, white, legendary creature Rabbit Warrior, and has 3 activated abilities. If you tap 2 untapped tokens, you add 1 mana of any color. If you tap 3 untapped tokens, you draw a card. And if you tap 4 untapped tokens, you put 3 +1/+1 counters on Baylen, and it gains trample until the end of the turn, making it a 6/5 immediately. So very important is that middle ability. In Naya, if you're making a bunch of tokens, it can sometimes be hard to recoup card advantage or get stuff back. The ability to go tall in the middle with that last ability, instead of just having a million 1/1s and getting stonewalled by your opponent's 4/4s, that lets you make one big creature in the middle. And, oh, by the way, if you have tokens in play when you play it, you can tap 2 of them to add 1 mana of any color, or you can use this to ramp in the future. If you go like a turn 2, raise the alarm, and then play this, you have mana the next turn. There's so many things that this card does and does well. There's a bunch of effects in the set that say, tapped cards don't take damage or are destroyed. Boros Convoke has a bunch of those cards as well. There's a bunch of places I could see Baylen seeing a home.
Yeah, this is one where, I sort of felt like when you saw that fountain from Nuka Pen, and you're like, oh, tokens are going to be able to draw these cards. But it's like, that always had the flaw of you had to have tokens tapped so you can untap them.
Yes.
Right? This is just like any token sitting around. And it doesn't even have to be creature tokens, mind you. Like, these could be food tokens.
Yes.
These could be whatever. Like, just sitting around at the end step, you're like, you know what? I'll take 2 cards. F it. Like, eventually I'm going to find the thing that's going to let me break through. Even if you never pump Baylen, like, you can get a lot of value off of this card with just a couple extra tokens sitting aside.
I appreciate the fact that you can do things like Novus Inspector, raise the alarm, play Baylen, draw a card, right? That'd be cool. I'm down for that.
That's awesome.
But they made a new 3 seriously, and it's called Hop to It. For a white and 2 generic mana, you make 3/1/1 white rabbit creature tokens. Let's go. Like the Inspector and the Raise the Arm, this draw card, hop to it. Like go nuts, smash in with a 6/5. Like I'm ready to live that magical Christmas land life using Baylen and lots of tokens. I love this.
But this is what we were talking about though, right? The set had to have cards like this, so some of those themes don't get lost as we move on to other sets. And this feels like the type of card that could help push one of those themes.
And it is going to be a 7/6, by the way. Thank you, Arju.
7/6, yes.
With trample.
With trample, for sure. And you can do that multiple times in a turn.
Yeah,
if you really needed to. This card goes well in a ton of commander decks as well. There are a number of Naya tokens decks, or at least Naya decks that make tokens.
Yes.
Hazazon comes to mind. Geared is a new token deck.
Yep, I just played Geared in a video today, actually. So on the YouTube channel for
tons of good ways to take advantage of Baylen.
And Virtue of Loyalty says
itself.
High.
Yeah, Virtue of Loyalty is another also good one. Wow. Because you untap.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, you do.
Sure.
Love this card. All right. Power Dragon, what's your first card?
Mine is just a really fun quality creature. It's Keen-Eyed Curator. It's 2 green, so just green for a 3/3, which honestly, that alone, I'm like, all right, this is at least playable, right? Before I read anything else, I'm like, unless this has a big downside, we're probably okay here. So it's a Raccoon Scout, and it says as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards exiled with this card, it gets +4/+4 and trample. But then the next line is you can just pay 1 colorless mana and exile target card from a graveyard. This is awesome. Like the number of times you want to play stuff to just keep things from being recurred from the graveyard, or you want to stop flashback cards or whatever, but you sort of have to play like wonky little artifacts and things that don't really help your deck do what they're trying to do. It's kind of annoying. But here you can just be like, all right, cool. I'm just going to play a creature I'm going to bash with, and then occasionally, if you don't kill it, you just ain't getting a graveyard. And then possibly I have a 7/7 for no good reason.
Right.
Like I literally looked at this card and went, what is this?
Yeah.
Like why is this like, okay, cool. I'm in. 2 mana 3/3 with awesome upsides.
Right. So let's do some math real quick and compare it to Scavenging Ooze. Now, that is the most obvious comparison, and I think that this compares favorably to Scavenging Ooze. At 2 mana, this is a 3/3 and Scavenging Ooze is a 2/2.
Okay.
And that's the earliest we can play it. I'm on board.
But it is harder to play than
it is harder to play.
Yeah.
Than Scavenging Ooze. At 3 mana, it's pretty much identical because it's generic green total, right? Scavenging Ooze is a generic and a green, and then the activated ability on Scavenging Ooze is a green.
Okay.
Whereas this is green with activated ability of a generic.
But has to be
You're
a creature.
also having to assume it has to be a creature card.
Correct.
It
has to be a creature that Scavenging Ooze is exiling. So, and you're also gaining a life off of Scavenging Ooze if it is a creature. So I think it's even at 3 mana. At 4 mana, Scavenging Ooze pulls ahead a little bit because it gets to be a 4/4 rather than a 3/3.
Sure.
Same with 5 mana.
Fair.
But as soon as we get into like the 6-7 mana range total investment into the card, Keen-Eyed Curator wins, right? As soon as we have our 4 card types, it's a 7/7 and it stays there forever. And it has trample, not to mention the fact that the activated ability is colorless. Now, Scavenging Ooze can theoretically become like a 10/10, but it never has trample. It can gain you life, but it doesn't get up to a 7/7 as fast as Keen-Eyed Curator does. I think that Keen-Eyed Curator might be a better card in most circumstances than Scavenging Ooze for younger formats.
That's fair.
Because in younger formats, A, your card pool is more limited, and B, your mana is not as good. So having the activated ability be colorless rather than the green be colorless is a huge deal.
I will say the other thing I like about it though is that if I'm playing against a control deck, this could be one of the cards I hold back. Then
Right.
post sweeper, just be like, cool, now I got a 7/7.
Right.
This is, I gotta kudos to the designer. This is a really clever design, because what you're kind of doing in a variety of ways, yada yada yada, is you're paying 6 mana for a 7/7 trampler.
Mm-hmm.
And in the history of Magic the Gathering, there's only been 5 cards that are 6 mana for 7/7 tramplers, and they're all mythic and/or rares, going all the way back to Child of Gaia, which is a 6 mana 7/7 trampler, but you had to pay mana during your upkeep and things. Recently, Kogla and Yadaro from Mom was that was a thing you could do for 6 mana. But again, the bunch of colored mana all the way across. One's got an upkeep and so on. One is dinosaurs on a spaceship that you're not gonna be able to play in any standard format. So I love the idea that, like, ultimately this is kind of what they do with things like Echo and so on. You're breaking up the payment to get sort of the same amount of value, but the way that it works and the way that it feels and the way that it interacts with your opponent is super unique. So I love this, that you're ultimately spending 6 mana to get what would be sort of a standard, honestly, output these days, but it's got to be the different card types. It's messing with your opponent. It lets them power up graveyard strategies, because this is the type of card that can go in a whole bunch of decks and not have anything wrong with doing so.
Yeah.
And you can play it early compared to those other cards. That's the thing. A 2-mana 3/3 is still solid.
Right. And can
2 mana 3/3 still solid. Ultimately, this card is going to live and die by whether the burn spell of the format deals 2 damage, 3 damage, or 4 damage. Because if the most popular burn spell of the format is Take Out the Trash, which deals 3 damage, Keen-Eyed Curator is not going to see any play. But if it's a Shock or if it's a Lava Coil, we could see Keen-Eyed Curator doing something.
I think my last favorite bit about it is that you can target any graveyard, yours, theirs, other opponents, so on. You don't have to pick and choose. Where I feel like, again, there might have been a world where this had to been opponent's graveyard, but they're like, you know what, just get rid of whenever. It's fine. It's cool. What's your next card, PDragon?
All right, my next one feels like it's kind of one of the key pieces for Raccoons, as you can see a theme in the cards I'm picking, for Expend, actually. But it's Muerra Trash Tactician. It's colorless, red-green, for a legendary Raccoon Warrior. That's a 2/4. So not too bad just on rate. But then at the beginning of your first main phase, you add a green or red for each Raccoon you control. That's a lot of potential mana every turn, starting on turn 4. And then whenever you expend 4, you gain 3 life. And then if you happen to spend 8 in a turn, you also exile the top 2 cards of your library. And then until the end of your next turn, you can play those cards. So lots going on with this card, but it's very possible that you start turn 4 with, if you play a land, access to at least 5 mana, maybe 6 or 7, depending if you played something on 1 and 2.
Right.
So, like, this has a lot of potential.
For sure.
I love the snowball effect of this card, right? Because once you expend 4, you gain the 3. Great. Well, you're probably playing more Raccoons. Well, then once you expend 8, you're flopping over 2 cards. So you're giving yourself all the fuel you need, whether it's lands or not, to keep going to the 8. And it just, like, keeps going. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. This is a ramp player's dream. The fact that, like, of course we want to be spending 4 mana. I'll take 3 life. Of course we want to be spending 8 mana. So I get more cards, which is kind of like drawing cards, which will fuel me next turn, right? So the trash will continue to feed the trash. Each Raccoon means all your changelings also add to this. Basically, you really want a bunch of not only stuff that has, like, repeatable effects, activated abilities that cost 2 or 4 mana, but you also want just big stuff like X spells. So you get to play a ton of really fun effects in your Muerra Trash Tactician deck, in addition to having Muerra be exactly what you want at the helm.
As someone who plays green-red ramp quite a bit, the other important part of this card is that it has 4 toughness. Because you're going to be playing against red decks, particularly if you're doing best of 1. God help us all. But yeah, to get that card down, it's not going to be killed with a bolt. Maybe 2 cards will trade for it. Okay, but if you get to untap, then you're gaining that life and you're kind of moving forward, because that's how you die. Let me tell you, that's how you die in green-red ramp, is you just die when you're like 1 or 2 life, but you're about to go completely bonkers. And that's what this shores up, and I think that's great. All right, so what's your last card here, PDragon?
All right, last card. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Scrap Launcher, but I couldn't find a good image for it. So I went with a different card. We were going to go the trifecta on the raccoons because that card is bonkers too.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to go with
the launcher. By the way, 4/4 for 3. That's all I read about the card. That's all I.
Yeah, it's 4/4
with reach.
4/4 for 3 with reach. You can gift a card when it comes into play to destroy an artifact and enchantment.
Right, you disenchant if you give them a card. Like, okay, sure. That seems great. Thanks.
Yeah, like the raccoons are stupid, but this one we're going to talk about is Essence Channeler. It's a colorless and a white for a 2/1 bat cleric. And then it has a lot going on here. So as long as you've lost life this turn, it gains flying and vigilance. If you gain life, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then when it dies, you basically get to do like the Beast Caller and put the counters on another creature. So this fits a lot of different decks, right? If you already do the life gain stuff, like currently exists in Standard, with the 2/2 cleric that gets a counter, and then once it has 4, it has flying. Once it has 8, it's indestructible. That guy, right? This fits into those builds already. But if you're playing the bat decks like we're gonna have, well, you're gonna be gaining and losing life, and this fits exactly what you want to be doing. It's easier to cast being a colorless and a white. It is only 1 toughness and then has to gain counter, so that makes it a little bit weaker. It doesn't start as a 2/2, but man, the upside on this is huge.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it does when you're 1 mana, 1/1 gains you life when you play creatures, right?
Well, yeah.
Right. That energy guy. Yeah.
Yep. There's the energy guy. There's what's the classic one?
There's Soul Warden.
Soul Warden, thank you. That's what I was trying to think of.
Oh, we have some in this set. There's a 2 mana one that does. It's a bat. Yep. It's like a 1/2 bat. You play a creature, gain a life.
Yep. I just think that this card was probably a black and a white mana at one point because it's so clearly, to me at least, showcases the black and white nature of the set.
Yeah.
Gain life, lose life. This gives you that payoff. And they're like, well, let's just make it easier to play. It'll showcase up in more white/green-white decks that have been played in older formats that gain life. And it still showcases, again, what the bats are doing.
Yeah. I mean, this card is ludicrously powerful. We've had, what was it, Voice of the Blessed?
That's the card.
Is that the card?
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a Johnny's Pride Mate, and like all of that style of card is, how the life gain deck can turn that life gain into demonstrably winning the game. By making a 15/15. The fact that this can give itself evasion and stay back on defense is also huge. So you want to play this in a deck with like Pain Lands or a way to deal yourself 1 damage. That's really excellent as well. Plus, when this dies, when it actually dies, you actually get to put it on another flyer or something else, or a lifelinker for that matter.
I mean, let's count some ways here. You've got the Ellis Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim.
Elias,
Elias, rather, thank you. Or is it Elias?
Ellis.
Is it Ellis?
It's actually just Ellis.
ELAS.
All right, well, there you go.
But you also have Deep Cavern Bat, a very popular bat already played in Standard, which is great. Nurturing Pixie to pick stuff up and whatever. And hey, there's Sholdred, the Apocalypse.
Sure.
Yep. Let's gain some of that life and get crazy. And so the ability for you to gain some life is easy peasy. You have, like, for example, Case of the Uneaten Feast.
Sure.
This is a rare case from Murders of Karlov Manor for 1 white mana. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield you control, you gain 1 life. Is the default part of that card. So let's take Essence Channeler.
Bats are going to be wild, y'all. Like, there's a lot of ways to lose life the way they've built the bats out. There's going to be a lot you can do with those.
And I think that's brilliant because, as far as I know, feel free to correct me, that's never been explored before. There's been, you've lost life, there's been, you've gained life, but it's not like, can you do it in the same turn and then get paid off for it?
For sure.
I think that's brilliant because,
Lord
knows we've seen just about like what green-red can do, what green-blue can do, and so on, but white-black has never sort of seen this space.
To your point there, I do feel like they made each of these creature types feel different. Right? Maybe the only one that probably doesn't is squirrels because they've been around so much making tokens. But even then, they gave them the forage option to try to work the graveyard, right? Mm-hmm. So nothing feels like we've done this before, right? It's not like, mice are just going to pump themselves or whatever. It's like, oh no, you want to trigger a bunch of things on these mice and make a bunch of crazy stuff happen, right? Every one of them feels different. I think that's also one of the appeals to the set, that if you do have a favorite creature type, it doesn't necessarily feel like more of the same old.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that they're doing with Arena, and specifically the Burrow Set Mastery Pass, generally the Mastery Pass was based sort of on levels. You would get experience, you would pass those levels, and you get rewards based on those levels. You'd also have these orbs that would unlock things like card styles and sleeves and so on. Well, with Modern Horizons 3, they tried to go sort of the direction of a prize wall where you would get tickets. And you could spend those tickets on stuff in there and high five. And so I bought that because I buy everything. I'm that guy. And so I'm in there and I'm looking at it and playing with it. For me, honestly, the Modern Horizons 3, prize wall thing was just about 8 mythics. You could cash in on 8 mythics. Once I cashed on 8 mythics, I'll get the card styles because they're cheap. I might never get the profile images or whatever. I might never get the sleeves because I'm never going to use them anyway.
It was cool for a bunch of extra packs if you wanted them.
It was okay, yeah, for a few extra packs. Again, for me, it was the mythics because I wanted to play, a bunch of stuff in historic and in timeless. So that was kind of neat. And they're kind of doing similar here where they're saying, like, you're still going to get orbs like you used to, but now you kind of cash in those orbs in a prize wall kind of fashion where you have, the ability to get 24, you can get 24 packs and 5x mastery orbs. And then so on, you get all this exclusive stuff in the middle of it. And again, you're able to use those things to kind of purchase them for various mastery orb amounts. Yeah. And that's fine, I guess. It's different.
Yeah, I've never really had a problem with it. Some people felt like, you're making us pay for another thing. It's like, well, they didn't take anything away. They just had a whole separate group of stuff that, hey, if you want some other things, give us a few bucks and you can have these other things. So, like, I'm fine with that. Like, if you're still free to play, there's still a lot available. But if you do want to spend a little bit extra, hey, here's some fancy things you can get. So why not?
Yeah, I mean, I never really engaged with the previous system. So any change to the system is good, in my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you, I felt like what they wanted to do was to give you a sense of agency in terms of like what you unlock when, but it was also on like a trail for each color where you had to unlock this card style, that card style, and so on. This kind of lets you go and say, okay, these are my favorite cards of the set. These are the ones I want the extended borders of, and so on. It gives you some more of that agency, which I think is nice. Because ultimately, from as far back as from when it just, first showed up, it always kind of felt kind of random. You know what I mean? Like, I would do like a dailies or whatever, so my daily stuff's out of the way. And beyond that, I would just get surprised. You know what I mean? It was rare that I was like, oh, I got to get another 100 XP for so on. It was like, no, I get a free booster because I played that match or whatever. Cool.
But bro, let me tell you, there are some people that they are hardcore free. They are tracking all that. Like,
they need to have value.
I talk to people that literally like, well, I don't want to re-roll my thing if it's at this much because the odds of getting it from 500 to 750 gold is only this much. And I'm like, man, y'all are grinding way too hard for me. I just like, if I can't get it,
I can't be bothered.
They grind hard. Let me tell you. I do want to touch real quickly before we move on here to the special guests of the set.
Yeah.
These are mythic versions of cards that are being reprinted into the set, not necessarily in the standard, but they'll be legal in the formats they're legal in, which is cool.
Evan, if you talk about what you did on the pre-show, I'm not gonna be happy.
I can't. I love the art. I think this art is beautiful for Frogmite. I think it's obviously a fantastic card. It is a 55-cent common that I will have to cash in 4 mythic rare wild cards to play. Just pour one out for me, y'all, because it's going to hurt my soul. It's going to hurt my very soul. But look, Sylvan Tutor and Sword of Fire and Ice are also coming to Arena, so
that's good stuff. I don't mind that.
I think that's awesome.
But I'm with you. The problem when you do some of these is also like, if you're opening these in regular booster packs, it doesn't feel as exciting to open something like a Frogmite. You know what I mean? And to me, that's always a tough thing. Even when I was at Wizards, some of the conversations we had is like, if you're going to make something special, it should always feel special, or at least as close as we can within reason. And like the fact that this has a couple of commons and uncommons in them that don't necessarily carry a bunch of value when you know what all the other options are, like it's going to be a little bit of a feel bad for some people when you get a special guest and it's like, oh, it's a Frogmite, it's a secluded courtyard, or whatever, it's
or rat colony, and you're like,
okay, at least rat colony, I guess, is like, what is it, still $3 or something?
It's right, it's solid because of that, but secluded courtyard is like,
exactly.
All right,
Yeah.
so I don't know that this is worth a red zone. I'm trying to decide whether I'd rather open a Frogmite than most of these cards, right? Like obviously Sylvan Tutor's more expensive, so I'd
Right.
rather open that. I assume Ledger Shredder and sort of Fire and Ice are more expensive.
Well, Ledger Shredder's rotating out of standard, so it doesn't even
It's fair.
have as
This
much desire
Kindred
anymore.
Charge I've never heard of before, so I assume it's expensive.
It's a commander card.
Yeah.
And it's pretty
Okay.
expensive because I only printed it once.
All right.
You know.
But like I mean, if I wanted Frogmites, if I played Frogmite in a deck, which I assume he's playing Pauper. I don't know if he's play anywhere else right now.
Sure.
I probably would rather have that than like the Force or than the Swords to Plowshares. Or I don't know, the Rat Colony and the Relentless Rats are questionable because you need 1 million of them for every deck.
I want to say that, you know, if and other games do this too. Pokemon does this a lot, where they'll do really special, hardcore, super rare promo versions of kind of commonly played or just kind of, you know, your standard usual cards or whatever that people play in every deck. Like really nice energy, for example. And they've done this before, you know, thank you, Pharmacist Judge, for Ornithopter as a Kaladesh invention, right?
There we go.
That was a Kaladesh invention. You got an Ornithopter. But no, when an Ornithopter is worth like $90, it's okay that it's an Ornithopter or whatever it is these days.
Sure.
That's this Frogmite, right? Is going to be probably minimum $4 to $5 card just because of how rare it is to pull out of packs. Not
I mean,
that
for all
it's
we
a
know,
$4
this
to
could end
$5
up being
card.
a $10 Frogmite.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like really, depending on how they fall into packs.
I think I probably would have rather this have been a Spore Frog if they really wanted to do a promo frog. Just because he's playing Commander more. You'd rather have like the one-off. But I get it. I get wanting to have Frogmite in the set. I'm not as
sure.
it.
I'm down for Frogmite in the set. To me, it's one of those things where it hurts because it's like,
Sure.
I get the setup. I understand why you're doing this. I also understand that you're a business that wants to make money, and it's hard to get those mythic wild cards. You know, and it's hard to open these in sets too. It's hard to open these in packs because they don't open themselves in sort of normal packs. You can open them in draft, as I recall, and in sealed, but otherwise they're kind of off limits. The only way you can get them is to craft them. So there's that.
Let me say that this is at least an upgrade from the list. You know, because the list literally, like, there'd be like 30 cards or whatever you could open. And some of them were literally just bad commons from like 8, 9, 10 years ago for no reason. Like card nobody wanted, right? Nobody needed. It's not played at anything. Like was just on the list, and that felt real bad when that was your insert card. So at least we're moving to things that are playable at the very least.
Yeah, and it's also a list that's on Arena. That's my favorite part of it. Because every time when this comes around, even if it's Dismember, even if it's Frogmite, it's getting those cards on the client. And I think that's brilliant. And sometimes, like Victimize, yeah, you can craft those mythics if you want, or you can wait until Modern Horizons 3 and just get them as uncommons and be done with it. You know what I mean? I love that flexibility too. So I can dig it. And again, like Sylvan Tutor being reprinted for like what, the first time ever since Portal. Like, I'm sorry, there was a Tales of Middle Earth Commander version that showed up, but otherwise that's it. So that's a $40 card.
Yeah, Algo has a good point. Some of these reprints do feel sometimes good for paper, bad for Arena. That's just the case sometimes.
It's true,
but that's okay. That's where, in those cases, paper gets an advantage, and that's all right.
We're going to move on here from the first pick to Gather the Townsfolk, talking about community issues. We're going to do that by thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders. The best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMikes_8N48 November 4. 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders. Tell them we sent you, and we appreciate them for sponsoring the show. All right, so Mr. Power Dragon.
Yeah.
There was an Arena Championship 6, and you were a part of that, correct?
I had a front row seat.
You did. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The Boros energy deck is broken.
It's pretty busted, yeah.
It's not fair. Like, we're in a position where I think, like, something's going to get banned. I don't know what it is, but I feel like we're really getting close.
Yeah, to kind of give the picture of the weekend for everybody, there were effectively 2 decks. There was Boros Energy that technically, if you took all the aggro energy variants, we're like 62% of the field.
Yep.
Out of 32 players. So 19 or 20 people played it. Oof. But then the deck to counter that was sadly also technically an energy deck in Jeskai control. So there was Jeskai control, Jeskai Lotus Field, which are just a variation of the same deck effectively.
Right.
So you have a bunch of energy decks making up 70% plus, probably 80% plus of the field, which is not great. Top 8 was 6 of the Boros energy decks, with 2 of the Jeskai decks making it. And you did at least get a final that was one of the Jeskai decks versus one of the Boros decks. So you at least had that going for you. Right. But it was pretty rough. Enough that even this week, what I've been able to hear through the grapevine is everybody's aware, nobody likes it. I think, and this is the part I'm speculating on, I think the reason there's no emergency banning yet is they're probably trying to do the thing where you don't want to ban the deck, but can we figure out like 2 of the cards that still leave it playable, but not busted? And I think that's maybe what they're trying to solve. And, you know, not to mention still worrying about the other grief issue that's happening in the other formats. So there's a lot happening right now.
And they want to keep selling Modern Horizons 3-packs, right? So,
well, the good news is some of the cards that are a problem in that deck are uncommons potentially, depending on how you view it.
Right.
So you could cut those and not completely cripple the deck, maybe.
Like, Amped Raptor is not a fair Magic card. Like,
right.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not. Like, I don't know how that even happened.
Guide of Souls, to me, is the big problem.
Guide of Souls is wild because if it did either of the things it does,
right.
You know, either gain life or generate energy, and then, you know, you could spend the energy to give something flying or whatever and a counter. Like,
right. But also
that would be fine. But it's, so and it's a 1/2. I don't even know it's a 1/2 on top of all, not even a 1/1.
The thing is that the Boros energy deck has 8 cards that aren't from Modern Horizons 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a lot. I don't like
it's
that.
Modern Horizons 3 constructed, let's face it.
That should be what's happening in Standard. The new set should be exciting for Standard as opposed to this.
Yeah,
Ocelot Pride is also insane.
There was a lot of Modern Horizons 3 in pretty much every deck. Like, every deck had adopted a big chunk of Modern Horizons 3 for the format.
For sure.
Even the like the Abzan Yawgmoth decks, there was a couple of those. Those also had Modern Horizons 3 cards in them. So,
as they should.
I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would.
It's a set full of pushed cards, you know, and you're playing the most powerful stuff you can in a very powerful format. And, like, you know, there's a problem. Like, something will be done. This will not, like, blow over. You know what I'm saying? This is not the meta will adapt. Like, something's busted. We got to figure out what exactly it is. How badly do you want to hurt the deck? How much, you know, force do you want to push into, like, making, hey, maybe if we could just play something else. You know, what I also
think it's hilarious that everyone is playing Sun Chaser. That is very funny to me.
Because they have
Sun Cleanser.
Because they have to.
Sun Cleanser. Yeah,
Sun Cleanser. That's the one.
Sure.
Yeah. It's very funny.
But Boros Energy also won it. You know, 6 of the top 8 and won it. That much of the field. Yep. You see those numbers, it's bad news bears.
Yeah, something's coming down the pipe. We just don't know what it is yet, but they're going to do something. I've said from the beginning, I don't have a problem with them just being proactive and saying, like, hey, we know these are problems. Let's just ban some stuff.
Right.
And let's just make things more fun. Because we talked about it last week, right? There's TOs right now saying we don't want to schedule tournaments because we know we're already struggling to fill some of these because the formats are that bad right now.
Right. And that's a serious problem.
Awesome if you want to play Standard. It's fantastic over there. But everything else, not doing so great right now. Like, just
warped. You know what I mean? Like, they kept, you know, they keep making these sort of warped sets where they're pushing and what if you just got rid of this? You know, the Nadu, there's 5 different ways that card could have been a little bit worse, but they didn't, and they just kept pushing. And so I think, you know, God forbid Modern Horizons 4, because you know it's coming, like what that's supposed to do and what it's going to look like, and are we going to be in this position?
Rocks too. That card's stupid.
That card is dumb. Yeah. Moving on here. wanted to note here a new Rhystic Studies video, as we all should as a community. He noted the Misbegotten mascot, the Hurloon Minotaur, was a giant mascot for Magic for years and years and years. When I first kind of encountered Magic, there was a focus on Juzum Jin, on Sarah Angel, and Hurloon Minotaur, and it was like. And then I was like, oh, this card looks cool. This creature looks really rad. And you learn it's just a 2/3 for 3, which is played in nothing, which is not good at all. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't compare comparatively. It's a great image, but makes no sense as like your flagship bearing so-and-so. Like, they had cosplay made of this, like they sponsored. They had that wild video from from Homelands.
Dude, there was a Hurloon Minotaur statue you could buy.
Absolutely. And that thing's worth big money these days. So, and also like the jackets, like the jean jackets were super rad. Did you guys see any of that stuff? On the back. Yeah. Yep. Another banger from Sam, as usual.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I feel like in the beginning, I still think, like, we think about Magic in today terms, but in the beginning, I don't think they even knew, like, what were going to be the good played cards or what was going to catch on with people. So they probably just went, what's some of the sweetest art we have? You know, and
that was like, pretty sweet.
Art. Yeah,
it was dope.
But, you know, then the game takes on a life of its own, and you're sitting there looking, going, yeah, at some point, we probably need to stop promoting this Minotaur because he kind of sucks.
That feels very similar to, gosh, it was like, what, 2012, 2013, when we kept asking for Jace the Mind Sculptor on things, and Wizards was like, could we just let Jace cool down for a minute? It's cool, but we'll just let Jace not be Jace the Mind Sculptor for a second. Yeah. That was a whole thing. So yeah, go check that out. It's lovely. Up next here is the hardest core I've ever seen anyone take a preview card. This is wild. Ruby at Ruby Plays, RUBEE Plays on Twitter, noted that their preview card goes live and it's tattooed on their body, and on their shin they got their preview card tattooed on them, which was incredible. I'll bring it up here on the screen so you guys can take a look at it, but I was pretty shocked to see this.
Hey man, listen, give her a preview card forever.
She earned it.
We've gotten a lot of preview cards in our careers, never gone this far. I've done like sketches, I've done like art, I've done panels, stuff like that. This is so above and beyond, and it's adorable. It's like the perfect card to get tattooed on you.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, I've made up characters on my channel. I have done skits where I trolled myself.
Yep.
I have done fun, fancy edits. Not once had I considered, it'd be cool if I got a tattoo of something. So that is a level of dedication I don't think I would ever be willing to go to. So props to them for sure. Like, that's somebody who cares about getting that preview card way more. However, it might have been coincidental that they also bonded with the art. Maybe the art spoke to them or whatever. So, and it does make a fun looking tattoo, to be honest.
Yes. Not since Zbex did her preview for Kazandu Nectarpot, and did an entire cosplay with like the big butt of the bug.
Oh yeah,
as like a yoga ball. Have I seen such an iconic like preview card?
Goodness.
Someone do something this iconic with a preview card.
There is definitely something very, very special when you're in sort of the content creator space and you're trying to make things happen, and you get that like look from the company, from the people who are involved in making things happen, promotions and so on. Like, hey, you're getting this thing that you've been wanting for a long time. For sure. So like when I got contacted in, God help me, 2008, and Wizards was like, hey, we want you to preview a new card from the set. And I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, it's so thrilling. It's incredible. Yeah. These days we're jaded all get out, but like back in the day, I'm telling you, I was pumped, and I'm
still kind of excited.
Oh yeah, Creekwood Liege. I mean, when I get the new cards every set, I'm super pumped. Creekwood Liege is a free Call of the Herd every turn.
That's right.
And I was geeking out, and it was super awesome. And so her card is Heirloom Epic, by the way, if you want to take a look at what that does. But Heirloom Epic was her card, and getting that tattooed on her ankle was incredible. So high five, way to go.
Yeah.
moving on here. I don't know a lot about Duel Commander. Do you guys know about this?
So not really. Dual Commander is a format that sort of passed me by, but it is a competitive commander, obviously one-on-one. Sometimes I think it was called French Commander for a while because that
I
was
think
sort
that's
of
what it was, maybe.
because there was a like a French Commander tournament that got pretty popular.
Mhm.
And it's been around a real long time. Like I feel like Dual Commander in terms of competitive play, predated competitive regular Commander. And so yeah, to see that it's getting its time in the sun is pretty exciting.
Yeah, they have hundreds of people battling in the French National Dual Commander Championship. Like, this is big.
Sure.
Like, it's big. Over in France, they're serious about this, and it's awesome. The idea essentially that you are playing competitive matches, 20 life, 3 games per match.
Right.
There's none of the commander damage stuff. You can only play your commander once. Like,
Hmm.
just period. You can't go back and pay a tax or whatever. No, you play it once, and if it's killed or exiled in the end, I guess you can reanimate it or whatever. And they have a whole event support that started on Wednesday, July 24th on Magic Online, because you can play Arena on there, of course. They have banned as commander lists, for example, right up there as a Johnny Nakatl pariah. Lol.
Sure.
But yeah, and stuff fully banned like the Moxes, the Power Nine, Bazaar of
Yeah.
Baghdad, and Friends.
Of
Things
course.
just that hate out all the other things. The One Ring, God bless it. But yeah, the idea that you can take a really cool format that's really kicked ass in a just one region of the world, but sort of spread it. You have the in the client. You can make this happen. They made it happen.
Mhm.
Someone took the time and the energy to put all this stuff together for events on the client. That's wonderful. So go check it out. Try the format. Maybe you like it. Don't know.
Yeah.
Can't say.
Dude, it's how we got Canadian Highlander.
That's
right.
Like,
Though I will say, what happened to Tiny Leaders?
oh, that
Yeah.
wasn't anything. Tiny Leaders burned out in like 6-8 months.
Tiny,
Like, it takes very long.
Tiny
to
Leaders,
go.
I think it died a
It
little
stuck
harder
around.
than
It
that.
stuck around for a little while,
It
but
took, I think,
yeah.
a couple years, but then eventually people were just like, all right.
There were some
This
people
is
talking
nice.
about it, but wasn't nobody really playing it anywhere. Like
Mm.
that thing burned out fast. Because the problem was it was a lesser at the time, I guess, modern or whatever we had equivalent, but it was also lesser commander. Like you just couldn't play the fun parts of either part of why you play those two formats. So it was like one of those times where you mesh stuff together and you didn't get the good parts of either one of them. So I didn't really understand it.
Man, Standard Brawl decks. Oof, that's a rough one. I do
Yeah,
know
yeah.
Standard Brawl does still exist. It is on
Yeah.
Arena to this day. I know, Reuben, you like to play that format, don't you?
I mean, I historically I have liked to play that format. I haven't played it in a while, but
Sure.
yes. I am a big apologist for Standard Brawl. That's for sure.
There you go. So let's go ahead and turn the corner here to Desperate Ravings, little stuff that may be wild and wacky. Mark Rosewater talks about the value boosters. There is a new product called value boosters. They may or may not have rares, for example, in them. They'll often have commons and uncommons only. They're at a much lower price point, and they're only going to be found at big box retailers, at mass market retailers, because they want to have something on the shelves that you can grab for a couple bucks. It's much cheaper than a normal booster. It's not as many cards as a normal booster, and then everyone's like, "Oh my god, you're ruining everything." And it's like someone said, why was it decided to remove the draft and the set booster, but then put in a value booster is better because it's supposed to be support for Pauper/Pauper Commander ? And he's like, you're conflating two things that have nothing to do with one another. Draft boosters went away because people like set boosters. Play boosters were a way to keep limited. And value boosters were addressing a need for mass market stores to have magic boosters at a lower price point. So when you go to the CVS's and the Walgreens and the Walmarts of the world, something for your cousin to just get some new magic cards who doesn't care that much about it, but likes what Bloomburrow looks like, this is an option.
Yep. Yeah.
This is one of those cases where when I say Wizards overshares and tries to over-explains, tries to communicate everything, like this just didn't even need to be a thing. Like this is exactly the type of statement that people are going to turn into some other weird thing or take it out of context or want to beat up Maro for not even doing anything wrong here or whatever, when the average player is never even going to see these boosters.
Never.
They're just not. Anybody, especially the players that are engaged enough to even send a question to Blogatog, they're just going to the local store or whatever. They're not even going to be in the spaces where those are going to show up. So there's like, it's a big nothing burger that now potentially turns into something because he answered a question.
It just sucks because A, the question had to be sent in. B, he had to read it, think about it, make sure what the response was, go through the response, post the response, and now that response lives out there to be used against him in the future if it ever changes. That's another thing that's happened, not necessarily in this, space, but anything they sort of answer about. And that's where they trip up a lot. It's like, oh, well, 10 years ago, you said so-and-so.
Like, looking at the page where like he answered the question, there's a bunch of responses that are exactly like what I'm saying. Like just, oh, well, they're just using this to fleece money, or well, I don't know if we can trust what you're saying because of blah blah. It's just like it's nothing. It's nothing.
It's right where they're like, oh, you're going to try to scalp the cards by selling them in booster packs and game stores.
And
it's like,
this isn't even the first time we've done this. We did this with Conflux way back when.
Way back.
So it's not even like it's a new thing. We're just running it back. That's all.
Same bit. One last thing here before we turn the corner and all. I just gotta note this. This was so cool and random and rare. Have you noticed that there's entire cards that are anagrams of one another?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know until this tweet.
This is awesome. Foresight and Ghostfire and Gift Horse all use the exact same letters. And some of them are really obvious. But some of them are really super duper cool. Like some of them are just the joke versions or whatever.
Right.
My favorite one, I'm going to go down here and find it, which I think is awesome. The Shivan Reef and Avon Fisher.
Yep.
Use the exact same amount of letters in their card names. That's brilliant.
That was incredible.
Kudos to Magic Data Science for putting this together.
I think it would take me a while to get that one. Like if you just gave me Shivan Reef and told me it's an anagram another card, that one of all of them probably would have taken me the longest.
Yeah. I wouldn't have gotten there. I mean, a bunch of these I would never have gotten there.
Right.
So it's really cool to see like all of these. I think my favorite one is that Forest and Foster are the same, just because Forest is so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And then Tinker and Reknit are palindromes of each other, which is very interesting.
Nice. And Whip Sergeant and Whisper Agent. Just so many cool little nice.
It just feels good.
Which is so funny because I think if I start at Whip Sergeant, I can get to Whisper Agent. I don't think I could have went the other direction though.
Yeah, same.
I dig it. I love it. I love stuff like this. It's kind of random, but then you go through and you look at like so many examples.
Yep.
And they're not just the two words, turn back around or whatever. Like it's really cool. So yeah, just absolutely love that. Again, Magic Data Science, MTG_DS on Twitter. If you're not following them, you're missing out. They post some fantastic content. And we are going to turn the corner to the finisher. We have a few incredible special guest walkers coming to the Bloomburrow bonus sheet, including Frog Nissa, Feathered Teferi, and perhaps most endearing of all, Tree Karn. There are dozens more planeswalkers out there, though, so tell me, which planeswalker are you hoping to see transform into a Bloomsona? Reuben?
Well, I want to see my forever crush, Jaya, visit Bloomburrow, especially if she happens to turn into a mountain lion-style calamity beast, perhaps better known as a cougar.
Power Dragon?
Well, there are a lot of good ones, but the one I'd want to see the most is Urza. Mostly because I think he'd turn into raccoon, because, raccoons. But he also loves making things with his hands, likes digging in the trash, and just like raccoons, he happens to be a convicted war criminal.
Oops. Mm-hmm. Well, look, I am shocked, I tell you, that a Johnny did not make an appearance on the Bloomburrow bonuses. Not because he would turn into a simple house cat, because based on the logic of the plane, I think he just turned into a regular human child. When he just turned into like a dude.
How unsettling.
Another theory.
That would be
maybe
weird.
He just turns into a chibi version of himself.
Sure. Or perhaps even worse, a tiny puppy dog.
Oh, that would be rough. Or what if because he's a lion, he just becomes one of the, what do they call the predators on that planet? Like,
are you telling me that if he turned into a dog, it'd be rough?
Oh no.
Oh.
It'd be so rough.
Or
that's like
what if it's personality based, and because everybody likes him, he turns into a capybara?
Hey, I like that. Johnny Barra? I like that.
Lovely. And we're going to end that that ends another live episode of Magic Mike. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Power Dragon.
Hey, as always, thanks for having me and for everybody for listening and watching. Because, man, this has been a fun week of Bloomburrow stuff.
There you go. Thank you, Reuben.
Hey, thank you guys. This was a long episode. I think next week we're doing this the streamer event.
We're doing the streamer event next week.
Mhm.
Join us
So
next
it'll
Wednesday.
be 2 weeks before another live show, but I'll see you next week for the streamer event.
Sounds like fun. As we move on here to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com. Use the code MagicMikes, promo code at CoolStuffInc.com. Save 5% off. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/MagicMikes. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us on our exclusive member Discord, live on twitch.tv at MagicMikes, live or taped on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, on TikTok at MagicMikesCast, or join us here next week. Same time, same place. Okay, in 2 weeks. Same time, same place. For another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.